Welcome back, everyone, to day 2 of the 3D Motion Show here live in New York at NAB East. I'm accompanied by some of the world's greatest artists showcasing how they use Maxon 1 within their workflow. So for those of you who are just tuning in, make sure you register at 3D Motion Show. Hit sign up for your chance to win a Dell laptop or a SenseLab tablet that we're giving away next week. And for those of you who are at the show, just get your badge scanned and we'll see if you win. All right, so next up we have the one, the only Cory Martin. Cory, take it from here, brother.
Hey, everyone. So, my name is Cory Martin. On the interwebs, I go by MoGraph Martin. When I was originally doing this, I thought it would be cool to like who I am, where I've been, what I've done. What I forgot to do is actually put who I am, where I've been, and what I've done. So, like I said, my name is Cory Martin. Most of my career has been social media, broadcast, when I freelanced, 3D animation, motion graphics, and modeling. Always using Cinema 4D and Redshift. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and play my demo reel. That is not what I wanted. So that's my demo reel. Let's see. So, getting into this. So one project I want to go over, how kind of my process, my ideation when doing scene blocking or coming up with like ideas on what I want things to look like. So for the first one, it's a short film I'm working on personally called Home. So what this is basically just going through all the homes that I've lived in throughout my life. And kind of making like a, I don't know, if you ever heard like a sad, not sad, but like melancholy song, kind of like reminiscing. So here's a still frame of kind of like what we're going to go over. Basically how to quickly model light and get like, get a mood going with like blueprints, right? So jumping over into Cinema 4D blank slate, which is the scariest thing I feel like when starting a project. So yeah, what I did was I created a blueprint in Adobe Illustrator. So basically it's just a bunch of rectangles kind of with the general layout that I wanted, because for me, starting out with cubes and trying to get spatial, all that stuff, it takes too much time. So what I like to do doing these is I like to use vector import, which in my opinion is amazing because it brings over colors and everything else, and it just right out the bat you can kind of do what you need to do. So I'm going to open this little blueprint, and then bam, you basically have all the walls, kind of like the spatial stuff. Obviously it's not where it needs to be right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this probably like that big, because it needs to be bigger in my opinion. And then we want to extrude it. So I found like 87 would be pretty okay, and I think, but you'll see why in a minute. So this needs to be rotated and moved up a little bit. So when doing like scenes like this, it's always good to get perspective on how big the scene's going to be. So what I like to do is just drop in a figure, which you can't see. There we go. So, you know, I mean, for a house, you know, not big, but pretty okay. Relatively good size for the walls. They might be a little bit too tall. So I'm actually going to drop down this to like, I don't know, 75 maybe. Line it up with the plane. And that looks good to me. So I like to keep this in here for reference, but for right now, we can just hide it. And if you hold down Alt while clicking these, it hides it from the render and the viewport as well. So, okay, I'm pretty good with this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this editable. So hit C, and bam. now we have all of our walls, geometry, everything we need. So yeah, as you can see now, we have individual walls that we can start playing around with and give geometry to. So first things first, what I like to do is I like to hit Shift-C, axis center, and rather than try to we'll just dock it up here. Rather than try to mess around with positioning everything, it just kind of automatically does it for you. So since everything is okay, I'm going to go ahead and just make these editable as well. These are all the selections. I don't really need those right now, and you'll see why in a bit. So I think for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to name everything right now. So since these are editable, we can go ahead and just kind of put these, let's see, down. Just position all the axes to where we need them to be. So now, if we needed to extrude this up or anything, it does it from there, which I think is very good. So I'm not going to do it now, but it's super important to name your layers. So definitely do that, because if not, once you get into this pretty heavily and texturing or any animations, it's going to be a nightmare trying to figure out what you need to do. So, all right. So for these, I think actually I want these to extend out a little longer. So we need it to be on the y-axis. Let's see. I think it's this one. Yeah. Awesome. Look at that. It just works. So I'm going to extend it out probably like there. Cool. So now that we have the basic layout, I'm going to start with this wall and hide the rest. Whoops. Awesome. So for this, now I don't have any references to all of my childhood homes, obviously, because back then I didn't take any pictures for this specific moment. So I'm trying to go based on everything that I remember, which is awesome because you have creative freedom. Super frustrating because you don't remember what everything looks like. But the cool thing is nobody else has been there. So if you put it on the internet and say hey, this is exactly the house that I grew up in, people will tend to believe you. So what I want to do is, what I remember is there was an archway right here, right, leading into the kitchen. So I'm going to create a cube, right, and just kind of position it where I need it to be, make it editable, come up here, bam, see, just works. And all right. So to get the shape that I want, and obviously this is super big, so what I'm going to be doing is just kind of doing some light modeling. I'm going to go into edge selection mode, and I'm going to grab these 2 points right here. Right click, I'm going to bevel these out, and does not look like an archway, but we'll just give it some subdivisions, kind of like that. But I'm noticing that does not look like the shape I need it to be, so I'm just going to go back and kind of make it more realistic. Cool. So then going back into edge selection mode, right click bevel, and now we kind of get where we want to be. Like that. Awesome. I think it needs to be a bit taller, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Back to object mode. If you hit 9 on the keyboard, that brings you back to your direct select tool, which is fun, but I actually want to do it this way. So if we go over here into the front view, we go to the vertex, just select all of them, and make sure over here visible only isn't checked, so that way it actually gets the ones in the back. And I'm just going to move it up to probably right about here, and that looks good. Awesome. So now that we're there, I want to actually use a bool to cut this out. And I'm actually going to turn on, I don't know how to pronounce it, Gerard shading, maybe? Sounds about right. So I can actually see the lines and what this does when I cut it out. So I'm going to come in here, and that's not where I want to be. Yeah, it is. Use a bool, which is somewhere. Right here, yeah. And you can also just Shift-C, type in what you want, and it'll pop up. So I want to cut these, and bam, look at that. Look at that, it's an archway. Hey, presentation's over, thank you for coming. No, I'm kidding. So that looks good to me, and before I make it editable, which is very destructive, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Actually, I'm gonna make a copy. I'll tell you why here in a minute. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this into its own group and just call this backup. Bring it down here. And so that way, I like working like this because once I get too far, I can't go back. So if I make a mistake, then it's more coffee, frustration, and starting over. So yeah, I'm just gonna keep that there for now. I'm gonna make this editable because, actually, no, I'm not. What I wanna do is go back, if I can, there we go. So I wanna create a single object out of this. So when I do that, here we go. It makes one object, and that way, it kind of just works because if you do this too many times, you're going to get some weird geometry and breaks and stuff like that. So what I want to do is there's actually another little arch right here from what I remember, or maybe not, I don't know. I'm sure my family who's watching this is like, that's not how it was, but today it is. So I'm going to rename this really quick. Kitchen. That's a plus sign. Divider. Cool. I spelled that right. Yeah. So doing what we did with the archway, again, I'm going to come in here, grab a cube, kind of get it to where I want to be. Probably about right here. Yeah. And this wasn't really big. It was probably like that. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Make it editable. It's a weird word, editable. So come in here to edge selection. We want a bevel. Nice. Yeah, that looks good. Probably about like that. Cool. 9. Awesome. So since this is here, we'll just place it probably right there. Yeah, that looks good. So again, using bools and stuff like that to just kind of quickly get some good geometry going. And again, I'm going to save that as a backup. And always make sure create new single object. Cool. So that wall's done. Awesome. So now bringing back all of our other stuff. Cool. So there's the kitchen divider. So now I think we can start on windows. So that way, once we get into kind of mood lighting and camera and stuff like that, we can get a better sense of where everything's going to be. So again, bools, basic cubes, and geometry are my best friend when doing stuff like this. So I'm just going to grab a couple booleans here. Awesome. So we'll start with this wall. I'm going to call this left wall. Very appropriately named. And I'm going to hide everything else, so we can just focus on this. Cool. So because I kind of know where everything's at and I want equal spacing on both walls and stuff, I'm just going to go ahead, scale this to what I think a window proportion would be, which could be more, could be less. I mean, you could get very specific, go onto different websites, find certain measurements and stuff, but I like to do it from memory. But if I was doing, if this was a real life project for, we'll say, a an apartment company or a real estate company, I would actually go in and measure everything. So, but I think that looks good. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and throw this into a cloner. And it does that, which is not what I needed to do. But I'll go in here, change this to linear. And instead of on the Y, I want it to be on the Z. Like that. I want 2. And I know it seems weird to like throw this into a cloner just for Windows, and it's like only two of them. But I can I can save this, not make it editable, and if I don't like it later on, if I want more windows, or in different places or spaced out differently, if it's like doesn't feel right, I can do it that way versus like moving one at a time and stuff like that. So we're just gonna throw this here, about there, space it out a little more, probably to, we'll say like there. That looks good. Awesome. And then our bool, left wall. Cool. Now we got some windows. And that looks good for me. So I'm going to keep this like that for right now. And actually, I could take this cube. I think this is going to work. I could take this cube because there's windows over here, and I don't want to have to, you know, make this editable again and go through all that stuff. So I'm going to try to place this really quick. Right, like right there. Scale this down. That looks good. So for kitchen windows, I think if I there should be a way to do this. Nah, I don't think that's going to work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then you got to improvise and adapt. So I'm just going to place this here for right now because I know I want it there. There's like another window here. Cool. This one's a bit bigger. So awesome. And like looking at this right now, I already know I'm going to need more space for a bedroom back here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Probably that much space. And that looks good. So if we bring everything back, since I changed that, I'm going to need to redo this, but I'll just delete this. And since I already have this left wall, I will just copy it over and take that out of the cloner. Cool. And awesome. So it's there. Cool. So I have everything that I need. And I think we can go ahead and make these windows. And since we're only focusing on this shot right here, I'm not going to do the kitchen or anything like that. I'm probably just going to like show you how to do baseboards, walk you through that step, kind of frame the windows a bit, and then probably make this door just so it looks nice. So since that's the case, we can go ahead and delete these. We do need a floor though, so, and we're going to scale this up incredibly large because why not? We can. Cool. So we're going to call this floor. Drag this to the bottom. Awesome. So now it's starting to come together. So we can just copy this over. Here we go. Yeah. Since we don't need to see it. All right. So since this is already done, this is done, let's go ahead and do the windows. So we want to focus over here. So since we already have like kind of geometry right here, I'm going to go ahead and back this up. Bam. Make this editable. I always forget. It's a problem. Make this editable. Cool. So now we already have like, you know, this edge right here. And what I'm going to do is hit UL, which is loop selection. So we already have this edge here. And instead of going in and trying to like inner extrude and stuff like that, I'm just going to right click and do edge to spline. Spin edge? No. Edge to spline. Where is that? It is somewhere. I think it's in here. Yeah, or is it over here? Oh, wait, hold on, hold on. Okay. Edge to spline. Thank you all. Cool. So now that we have that, we have a spline. I'm going to get one of these, the rectangles, and hit Shift-C, and I think it's reset transform now. It was reset PSR, but reset transform. Awesome. I'm going to dock this up here. So what I can do is, let's see, where is this at? Doesn't really make sense. All right, well, anyway, we have this. Just going to put it over here. We're going to rotate it. And then I like to do this because you have so much control over the extrusion and stuff like that. This doesn't need to be that big. It can actually be very small. We'll start out with that. So I'm going to do a sweep. Put these two in. I think this needs to be on top. Nope. It's like, why doesn't it ever just work? No. 90% of the time it's user error, which is on my part right now. So I think it needs more. Yeah. There's something happening. Really weird. Yes, it is. There we go. We'll do adaptive, and we're back. Cool. So now we have a window frame, and let's see. I actually want to take these out, and real quick, I'm going to put the sweep, make that a child of the rectangle, and just do the reset. So that way, that is right there. So I can move it where I need it to be. Cool. So now we have a window frame. And yeah, since this, I can come in here and make it larger, make it extrude more, come out a little bit like that. And since we're not like looking at the outside, this is an inside shot. It doesn't really matter over here. But that looks pretty good to me. I'll actually make it a little bit less wide. Kind of fake it. Yeah. Cool. So now I have a window frame, and we can just, I'm going to keep this editable. Live, just in case. Awesome. Cool. So that looks good to me. And now what you can do is, I really hate how they put the Windows key right next to the Alt, because every time you hit it, it brings that, it's just, sorry, end rant, my bad. All right, so I'm actually going to copy this again and kind of do the same technique for the actual like window frames, because I think it's better than kind of trying to do it like differently and weird. So we need to actually adjust this spline right here. I'm going to solo it, and I'm going to, since I'm already in point mode, actually, I'm going to bring this out. Yeah. I'm going to put it back in. Cool. I'm going to unsolo this. I think that's good. Come back. Solo this. So what I'm doing now is just like trying to get the framing right. Pun intended. Probably like there, yeah. Maybe even a bit more. And we're going to move this into place. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Since these are window frames, you know, probably a little less. We'll say like 4. That looks good to me. Oh, the mouse is going very weird. There we go. And since that, I'm going to go ahead and just save this as home, because I would hate for this to crash And then you have to hear me talk about how blueprints in Illustrator are awesome. Cool. So we got this. We're just going to quickly make another one. This needs to be a bit bigger. A little too big. Hey, there we go. I'm going to move this out. All right. Make this a little bit more. Cool. I'm going to place this. And instead of like doing more modeling, let's go into how I set up a camera rig. And then we'll get into lighting and environment and stuff like that, so you don't have to hear me talk about window frames anymore. So what I like to do is we'll put this all into a null, call this geometry. Yeah. I'm a motion designer, 3D guy. Spelling is not my strong suit. Also math, so my calculator app is always open, just so we are on the same page. Cool. Cameras. So I don't think I did this before. I'm going to go ahead, turn it over to Redshift. Pro tip, and this is like one of my favorite little things I've ever heard in my life because it works. If anybody is ever working in Cinema 4D, Redshift, okay? And you have After Effects open for any reason, if you try to render or anything, this is no fault to Redshift or Cinema 4D, but there's this weird thing where if you have multiple programs open that are using your memory, sometimes it just crashes, and it is horrible. So I actually found this out through a Facebook Redshift forum. Shout out to Saul Espinosa. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him. He is a Redshift guru. So if you go into Redshift in your render settings, you go to Advanced, you go to System, Memory. Currently, the used GPU memory percentage is set at 90. If you just, I don't know why it's this, if you drop it down to like 70, it like, I'm not going to sit here and promise you it'll never crash again, because it could, because things happen. But learning this trick has saved me so many re-renders, so many long nights, and nightmares. So, fun fact. So now that it's in Redshift, we can create a camera, and we're going to look through this camera, kind of loosely position it a little bit. I like this angle. You'll see why with the lighting. So that's cool. It's great, right? Done. For this, I'm going to create a null, right? I'm going to bring it over here. I'm going to call this target. This is the area of focus I want the camera to be pointing. So what I'm going to do, rename this target, because we're fancy. Right-click on your camera, animation tags, target. We're going to drop that target in there. So as you see now, when we move the target, it goes up. Like, was that cool? Yeah, it was fun. So with that, we can create a circle, right? Jump out of here, and we're going to position the circle to where that target is. And if you drop it, make it a child, reset, bam, it's right there. So rotate that, go back into here. Actually, I lied. I'm sorry. I lied to you guys. I hope you can still trust me. Instead of the target, we're going to go to the camera, reset, drag it out. Awesome. Now, we still need to rotate it again. 90 degrees. So now, with this, if you click your camera, align to spline, drop in the circle. So now you have a whole lot of options on what you can do. So with this align to spline, you can do the position, right? So you can do nice circular movements. It's really fun. Very smooth. So instead of trying to like, you know, do Bezier curves and stuff like that with your animation, and it just kind of works. But not only that, since the camera is pointing to that target and all that we had, we can actually increase the circle. So you can do like a nice zoom in shot, and we'll animate it a little bit too so you can see what I'm saying practically. But so yeah, that is awesome. So now when we look through our camera, you know, we have these options to where like, oh, look at this, look at that pan, look how smooth it is. Or hey, we want it to be a little bit Yeah, wider shot, right? So we have these options, which is cool. I'm going to change the focus to 25, just for this specific shot, make it look bigger, you know, and bring in the circle a bit. Probably like, yeah, probably like right there. Cool. So let's add just a quick ceiling so we can move on to lighting, which is my favorite part. We're going to do cube. Awesome. And for this, I can keep it editable. It doesn't need to be, we're not going to do any like tiles or anything like that. So jump in here. And again, we don't really need it to cover the entire thing. We just need it to be like, you know, about there. That looks good. Cool. So now we have this house. Looks pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead into my geometry and kind of just take these, jump out of my camera, go back over here, and copy and paste, which I use a lot. Okay. Cool. So I think now, like I said, we can move on to lighting. So if we give this, you know, a quick render, no lights, no textures, except for the scene default, which isn't really doing it for us. Make sure I'm in Redshift. Yep. Cool. So I'm going to create just a clay texture really quick. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy. I do want a little bit of shininess, but not too much. So I'm going to go probably like, yeah, it looks good. And I'm just going to throw this on all of the geometry so we still can catch some reflections and stuff like that. And usually I'd like to use an HDRI just for the outside to give it more of like, I guess, volume. But we're actually just going to use a simple dome light. So now if we start the IPR, cool. So now we got something. I'm going to turn off the background because I kind of want it to be like this. You know, when you're in a dream and it's like kind of weird and you know something's going on. I kind of want it to be like that. So we don't need anything in the background. So we're going to turn this off real quick. And I'm going to grab an area light. I'm going to right click, animation tag target. And instead of like going in position how I want, we can just point this directly at the target object. And make sure it's in the right position. Yeah, see? So actually going to bring it up a bit. Kind of want some like, you know, lighting, very moody. Cool. So we can start the IPR. So it doesn't really do much. We got to play with like a couple settings, but as you can see, you know, it's starting to get there. I'm actually going to rotate my camera a bit. About like that. Bring it in a little more. Cool. So with the dome light, the area light, we only have 2 light sources right now. I'm actually going to increase this a bit. And this spread, I'm going to bring down. So now it's way too bright, obviously. So the intensity, I'm actually going to just bring it back down a bit. Probably to like right there. Cool. So now what we can do is we can go in here and do a redshift environment. And bam. Horrible. Looks terrible. What is this guy doing? We actually need to, the scattering is okay, but if we go into the area light, go into the object, it is somewhere in here. Where are you? Yeah. So for volume, we're going to put this down. Actually, I'm going to start the IPR again just so we can see this in real time. Put this down to like 0.1 to start out with. Still way too overblown. Let's go 001. Way too overblown. Dome light, that's why. We're going to set that to 0. Now we can go back in. Let's put this to 0.1. So it's still overdone, but as you can see, now you're starting to get these like nice window shadows, and it just looks, you know, it looks better, right? So I'm actually going to turn this down to like 0.05. keep going. This is super powerful, so not enough. 0.02. Okay, I like that. I'm gonna adjust this because I think we're getting too much reflection. Let's turn the roughness up a bit. And probably make it like that. Yeah, there we go. So this is looking pretty good. I don't want to see this window over here. So yeah, that looks awesome. Cool. So now that we got that, we can add in some global illumination, which makes everything better. And what I like to do for global illumination, I like to use brute force for both. And then because our interactive rendering is set so high, I mean, if you have the computer to handle it, awesome. If not, I like to put this down to like 256. So what you see in here, it will look a lot better once you render because you have automatic sampling set, so it'll figure it out for you. If I was doing an actual render, though, I would turn off automatic sampling, and I would adjust these accordingly. So if this is like final render, and I'm going to put it into After Effects for color correction and stuff like that, I would probably set this up to something like 512. Minimum samples probably like 16. But for now, we don't really need to worry about that. So we're going to start this again. And I think that's looking pretty good. So let's start animating the camera a little bit, just to get some keyframes. And once we do that, I think you'll be able to see the power of this little camera rig setup. So first and foremost, I want to start out here. I turn this all the way down. Yeah. So I want to start out here. Yeah, right here. So position. We'll do this like a really long shot, so we'll do 72 frames. I'm going to move it around a bit. Maybe like right there. Let's see what we got so far. Way too fast. But we can go into window. Where are we at? Oh man, they moved it. I'm trying to find the timeline manager. It's somewhere in here. Here we go. F curve. All right, awesome. So if you can't find what you're looking for, if you hit H on the keyboard, like, you know, you have a lot, and we'll say like, I think this still works. Yeah, so if you're like over here and you're like, hey, where are my curves at? If you hit H on the keyboard, it'll bring you right to it. So I actually want to make these linear. Both of these. That is not linear. That's linear. Cool. And I think what we can do is actually add in more. We'll do 250 because we're fancy. I'm going to go back over here, highlight this, drag it out more. So now it's more of like a, yeah, that looks good. Maybe too slow, but it's all right. So we have this little like camera pan. Again, we're targeting the null that's like right over here. And I think that looks good for what we want. But we can also adjust this as well. So, you know, we can start out here. Make sure you're on frame 0. So we'll start here and probably change this a bit. Let's change the camera, actually. We'll change this to 36. So obviously, you know, you have this empty space over here, but if I was to put this in my timeline, I would cut. So we'll actually go to like right. We'll go to like right here. Have the circle. Delete this keyframe. Go to about here. Stop. And then go down the timeline, maybe to about, what are we at? 58, 60, 72. Drag that a bit. So I'm going to adjust this to about there. A lot of this stuff is just trial and error, which can be fun. It can also be very time-consuming. So we'll start there. We'll delete this keyframe because I like it just the way it is. Did I delete the wrong thing? See? No matter how long you work in a program, I'm telling you. So we want this. We want to delete the circle keyframes. That's where we want to delete. Yeah. Not everything else. And it's still a little slow. Bam. So we'll speed this up a bit. And there you go. So that's my camera rig setup. I'm going to stop here for this project because there is one project I want to show you. So this is how I would go about building an entire house, right? So, I mean, this is just one floor. We only did like 2 windows, set up some lighting, like I said, with the dome light, 1 area light, and a redshift environment. 0 textures, but, you know, within what, like 30 minutes, you have a very strong foundation for moving forward with upstairs, downstairs, objects, you know, different lights, different moods, everything else. So that's one way that I went about building all of these big worlds and houses and stuff. We're going to stop this, and I just want to talk about real quick because I feel like the theme or what everybody has been touching on is like the power of Vertex maps, right? Like insane, from cloth simulations to displacements and stuff. But like what I used it for is something much more simple because it's fun. So I'm going to play this. This is a logo intro that I did for a company, a production company in Nashville. Right? So what I did is, one, obviously, this is like very retro 80s game, Stranger Things type thing, so love that vibe. But what I did was I made a Vertex map, and I just plugged that into the opacity channel in the Redshift Vertex attribute node. And what it allowed me to do was pretty quickly just, like, you know, make it appear. But it took me years to figure out how to do that. And once I did it with a Vertex map into the opacity channel, I kind of felt like, why are you a 3D designer? You ever have those moments? Terrible. But yeah, so I'm going to touch on that really quick because I think I have literally like a couple more minutes. So this is the actual project on how I set this up. Cool. So pretty simple. We got a logo here, couple linear fields. Yeah. So I'm going to open up a new. Oh, those are kidneys. I don't think we need kidneys. Let's go back over to here. Yeah, this is what we want. Oh, hey, it's my logo. So what I want to do is I want to take this low poly, right? I want to take the low poly. We'll delete these. I want to go into polygon mode. I want to select all the polygons. I want to select set vertex or set vertex weight. Hit OK. Now it's red. Why is it red? Because when we hit use fields, it's freeze, and like, you know, other people have said, now we can start adding different noises and stuff to it, which is fun. But first, I want to make a linear field. I'm going to rotate this. Let's see. Yeah, way too big. Let's actually do -y, because why not? Love puns. I'm sorry you have to deal with it. We'll go back into object mode, make this much smaller. Probably something like that. So I'm doing it the wrong way first, so I can show you how I do it and what I think is the right way, but honestly, there's so many ways to do one thing. Who knows? So as you can see right now, it looks super like, it just doesn't look good, like at all, right? Like you have these weird lines and like corners and edges. So if we actually went to do this, it would look terrible, right? So what I did was, well, the reason for that is because there's just not enough geometry and information for these vertex maps to like read and look at. So if I do the same thing, I have a high poly right here. And I got this high poly using the Z remesher, which if you haven't used it yet, it is a lifesaver. Because I say lifesaver because I refuse to use the word game changer. I feel like, yeah, I personally, personal preferences. So we're going to do the same thing, highlight this. I'm going to hit, I think it's Control A. Nope. I'm lying to you again. I'm sorry, everyone. Alt A. Nope. We'll just click the button we needed to be on the entire time. So select, set vertex weight OK. And now if we do the same thing, we head over here, use fields, linear field, -y, because why not? Zoom out and make this much smaller. So now you have a very, very clean line. So let's, oh, there we go. See, the difference matters. So real quick, let's set up this texture. So we have our high poly texture. Come in here. Is it utility? Or math? Might not be either. I think we could hit Shift C and type in vertex attribute. And again, always name. So we'll call this high poly opacity map. Cool. So in this vertex attribute, we're just going to drag and drop this in. Now that it's in there, we can plug this into overall opacity. And nothing really changes as of right now. But if we go into, we'll add a dome light really quickly just so you can see. So now you can see it's invisible, which is what we want. It doesn't show up. Take the background off. Cool. So now with the linear field, you know, we can go in, adjust accordingly. But since I want this to reveal top down, I'm going to change the orientation. So here we go. And just like this kind of looks boring. And what I love about the vertex map, as others have said, is you can layer on as many things as you want. Like there is no real like stopping point, you know. So we're going to add in noise. Way too big. So we're going to adjust this noise. We'll drop this down. Maybe like that. That looks good. Adjust the clipping. And change this to, let's see, something fun. Cool. I like that. So when you start layering these, if we go back in, so for all of these textures, it's super simple, right? Like there is not much going on. Everything is being driven by like the Maxon noise texture into the roughness channel, vertex attribute, and that's basically it. So even with like 3 nodes, because for me, nodes scare me. I hate them. When I had to learn them, I was like, I'm gonna have to switch my career. So, you know, but they're actually not that bad. Like once you start learning, doing tutorials, which honestly tutorials are your best friend, it becomes pretty easy. And once you know one thing, you can apply that to another thing. So, which is why, again, I wanted to do the vertex attribute because, you know, from simulations to displacements to logo reveals or opacities and stuff like that. It's just so versatile. Like, you can't really go wrong with it. So yeah, that's how I animated this. And I think with that being said, I think we're gonna wrap this up. I wish I could tell you that I had a great end page like everybody else, but again, I do not, because I was terrified. So we went through this. This was like the mood board, if you want to see it, kind of cool. Couple stills. I love beauty passes. They're my thing. If you look at my Instagram and other portfolio stuff, it's mainly just a lot of personal renderings, because I think personal projects are the key to learning, success, and stuff like that, because working with clients, you don't really always get the opportunity to do stuff for yourself. So these are that. Was gonna go over modeling, however, here we are at the end. So enjoy these nice pictures of toy cameras. And here is my absolute awesome end card. Thank you, everyone, seriously, for listening to me ramble about windows and window frames for 50 minutes. Shout out to Maxon. Thank you all so much for having me, my family watching at home, and my girlfriend who hates me talking about 3D and cinema. So thank you all.
Awesome. Let's give a big round to Cory Martin. Awesome. I'm going to dig up questions, but the live audience does have priority. So, dear live audience, questions. Jay, you always have a question. Don't act shy now. Don't act like you're tired. All right, let me see what we have here, if we have any questions. You might have just done good enough where everybody was able to follow along.
Maybe.
That has happened.
I mean, I can't really think about how many questions somebody would have about window frames and blueprints.
Window frames.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, here we go. Zach is back.
Oh yeah. So
What was the question?
How do you get the noise coming through the window,
Okay,
like the
so
streaks and stuff?
volumetric.
Yeah. So with that, let's go in here. So are you talking about this part? Yeah. So there's this thing right here, like the spread within your area light. So if you turn this all the way up, I mean, it's not like it's going to be everywhere, right? But if you bring the spread down, it focuses solely, if you turn it down to 0, it's not going to do much. But if you turn it to we'll say 0.1, so it's hyper focused in one area. So what that does is how can I explain this? Because I don't know technically what it does, but basically you're limiting the amount of area the volume is trying to calculate. So when you do that, it actually picks up on objects that are in front of it better, which gives it those God ray type light stuff. And you can even what I've done too in the past is with Grayscale Gorilla, the gobos, the light leaks and stuff like that they have. Highly recommend those. Those are huge time savers. But you could actually just put planes right here in a cloner object, and get even more light rays and broken upness. So if that makes sense.
Cool. Another question we have is, any tips for getting past that terrifying empty viewport? So if you're working on personal projects. Yeah,
I mean, for me, I find comfort in other people's work. Inspiration, right? So everybody has people who inspire them. So if I have an idea in my head and I don't know where to start, I really hate to say this, but I'll go to Instagram and look at my favorite artists, right? So I'll see their projects, I'll get re-inspired, I'll take a walk. And then I'll just make something that has nothing to do with the project I want to do. So that's how the toy camera came about.
Start off on a far tangent,
and then you're I can you get so excited, and you're like, this looks awesome, and then you come back to the project, and you're like, all right, I'm ready. So inspiration, far way out there, tangents. Wild tangents, and just starting, honestly, yeah.
Awesome.
So
just get your mouse in motion.
That's right.
Just start clicking buttons.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's hear it again one more time for Cory.
Thank you all so much.
Stay tuned. We're going to be on our last presenter right after this quick commercial break. So stay tuned, everyone.